president of the Washington County Historical Society for 1998. And our program today will be in McIntosh, Alabama, at Andrews Chapel. At this time, we'll begin our program. Andrews Chapel, McIntosh, Alabama. Mr. Theodore Pearson, Mr. Howard Doherty, and Mr. Reverend Billy Hall.
I'm thinking that she was assistant to Grandpa Johnson's father. She was a Johnson. Just a few block of land. Right. This you see here, Corvina Johnson. And I'm hiding it somewhere. See it? And I think she was a sister to Grandpa Johnson.
And this is a Bible,
right?
One of the original Bibles in.
This is an old Bible that was here in the church. It's very fragile. And Mrs. Lindsay brought my daddy, which was J.W. Rivers, had a woodworking shop here. She brought him this piece of wood, said it was the door off of her grandmother's wardrobe. So this would be a very old piece of wood.
When did he build it, do you know?
He died in '73, so that would have been before that. McIntosh. In the year 1775, William McIntosh, a Creek chief of Whiteside, was given a grant of 500 acres on part of what is called McIntosh Bluff. That's a 2-mile stretch of bluff on the Tom-Digby River. There's not much offered after that until in the year 1802 and 3 when the Lorenzo Dow came through this area. But he found a settlement at McIntosh Bluff and started preaching to them. He stayed 2 years. He bought land at Nahuppa Island, which is down where the Tom-Digby and the Mobile River connects down below us. Then in 1908, another minister, Sturdivant, was sent here to be the full-time minister. In this little book, we have a list of all of the ministers that have been at this church since 1908. In 1907 is when Aaron Burr was captured here, just a short distance from the church here. And in the write-up about them, it refers to that they had spent the night in a church because there was a storm. So therefore we know there was a church here in this area in 1807, when Aaron Burr was captured. People believe that the Indians destroyed that church. But this church here was built in 1860. And the land was given by the Rush family, a 5-acre tract to build this church on. And it's made with hewed logs with slave labor. And I believe it was the Powell family who furnished the labor to build this church.
When did they quit using this church?
In 1952, the new church here was completed. We had the first service on Mother's Day of 1952. And we use this church at least once a year on Memorial Day. We all come out, we have a memorial service, we have a veteran who comes and speaks, and then we put flags on all of the veteran graves here in the cemetery. And occasionally we would use this on Easter sunrise service. It's very good to be in this old church on Easter morning and see the sunrise, where in the other church we can't see it.
How many people will this hold?
I'm not sure, but probably about 75, between about 100. We have filled it up a few times.
Should they stand up all the way around and one out and see?
Any other questions?
You have had some revival services
Oh,
here or
yes,
something.
back in 1948 when we moved down here, that was a big thing. Every summer we would have, usually young ministers come who was still in college and hold revivals here. In fact, there's 2 or 3 of the girls from McIntosh married some of the ministers that come through here.
Well, while you're up there, tell us something about your father and mother. Who they
Okay,
were.
my father came here in 1947 to work for Stutt Sawmill, which was the only industry in this area at the time, or the biggest industry. And Carol Doherty was the manager of the sawmill there, and Ruth Everett was the secretary. And he was working at Thomasville for Stutz there, and he was offered the job to be head millwright to come to McIntosh, and the pay was $50 a week. And at that time, that was a lot of money, but he still had 5 children to take care of, besides himself and mine. But we did move to McIntosh in 1948 on May the 21st. And I heard my parents say so many, many times that moving to McIntosh was the best thing they ever did.
Who were your brothers and sisters?
The ones that came to McIntosh was Jewel, Dylan, Billy, myself, and Nora.
My name is Howard Doherty, and in 1925, my dad bought an acre of land in McIntosh, just up here, about a half a mile. And I was 4 years old, so I grew up in this church. We came to church regular. We had no wood heaters, you can see, going up through the roof. And what I can remember most about this church are the revivals and how the people really were saved. They would come to this altar crying with tears in their eyes, and they would become changed people. So it was really an experience growing up here. We didn't have Sunday school here, you can see. We couldn't, so we had to go outside underneath the trees. And there were big oak trees all around here. So we'd go out, one class together on one set of trees, another class over here. Now our teachers then were, and Mr. Van Hoos is here, some of his people, and the Slades who lived up about 4 miles up north, some real educated people who had come here to play this old organ, you know, and made the most beautiful music. They came here and they became active in the community. Carol might be able to tell you more, but the Stedhams, I remember very well, the Boykins and all of Corey, the Boykins, and just growing up here and then studying and learning about the history of the fact that it was built in 1890. And that this picture you see on the back there of Lorenzo Dow, I've said enough about growing up in McIntosh, and I'd like to call on the Reverend here to come up and tell us about the connection between our families and the Dows.
Mr. Daugherty, before you go, would you mind tell us about your father and mother and your family? Give us some names.
My mother was Middleton. She was Charlie Middleton's daughter, and Charlie Middleton married a Lyons from up at what we call Sunflower Road, this side of there. And he was one of the original founders of the old Baptist church there in across from where the Hinsons used to live. But so my mother, that was my mother's mother, and then my dad, of course, lived out where my great-great-granddaddy had homesteaded 160 acres about 6 miles west of here. And so his generation, my granddaddy and all, moved to this little area here. We didn't have a town, we didn't have a store until later. Moved here in the in the 1920s and the early 30s. Did I say 19? Yes, that's right. Any other questions?
And your children?
My children, of course, were born here in McIntosh, and I was married in 1920. In 1941, I get my dates all confused. And my first child was born in 1943, and of course, I lived here until 1960, and then I moved away.
The name of your children?
My oldest son was named Howard Daugherty Jr., and he married Dickie from out near Chatham. And they had 2 beautiful girls, my granddaughters. I'm so proud of them. I saw them this morning on their way to church. It was great. And my daughter married a professional football player with the Cincinnati Bengals. They went to school together in Cleveland, Tennessee. And upon his graduating from college, and she graduated from high school and had 2 years in at the University of Tennessee. He signed with the Cincinnati Bengals, and so they had 2 children. That gives me 2 grandchildren. One of them's living in Cincinnati now, and the other one's living in Chicago. So they almost lost. My youngest son was born in 1954, and he lives in Mobile. He and his wife both work for the University of South Alabama. She runs a laboratory for Dr. Winkler down there, and he works at the Memorial Gardens. So it's been a central gathering place, but not really home to any of my children.
How did this start as a Methodist church? Was it non-denominational or Baptist or?
Methodist from day one. As a matter of fact, John Wesley had a great deal of influence on Reverend Dow. And at that time, these families lived in places that you wouldn't recognize that a house had ever been. You know, that was high. But the old trail from McIntosh Bluff came right through here and went right up there where Aaron Burr was captured, went across that creek there. But he spent the night at the home of one of these people who lived here, and I wish I could remember more. I've heard this story many times, and there is a plaque over here on this old road where the capture was actually taking place. Any other questions?
My name is Billy Hall. I'm the pastor of the Pine Grove United Methodist Church in Leroy. I grew up in Jackson. How do I connect with the McIntosh community and church? My great-grandfather his funeral was held here, of course, because this is where he grew up. And so was my great-grandmother. I will mention that his mother was a militant. My great-grandmother was a militant. Grandpa Johnston was 8 years old when the church was built. The one thing that I remember from attending his funeral in 1942 was the minister who was conducting the funeral said, Grandpa Johnston's father worked on the church, and Grandpa, as an 8-year-old boy, would come with his father and play in and around the church during the time that the workers were building. Now, Grandpa Johnston had several sisters, and among them was Howard Doherty's grandmother, Aunt Fanny Doherty. There were others, and I'll not elaborate on all of them. Perhaps you know them better than I. But my roots are here in this area. My grandmother was George Johnston's daughter. She was one of the twins. Her name was Stella, and she had a twin named Ella and Stella. There were several more of the Johnston girls. Only one of them, Myrtle, is buried in the cemetery by Grandma and Grandpa Johnston. I think some of the other families that have been prominent in the church would be the Harris family. Boy Jr. Harris, whose grandmother was a sister to Grandpa Johnston. Boy Jr. lives in the near Chapel. Now, you ask me anything you want to ask me, and I'll see if I can.
Can you tell us anything about Lorenzo Dow? Do you know any of the history on him?
I know very little that I could talk about. The only thing I know is legend that has been told about him, and that he was somewhat of an independent man. He was never a member of a conference. That is to say, he was a traveling evangelist and pretty well traveled as he pleased and where he pleased. That doesn't say that the work that he did was not great as it was in the year in which he lived.
And I believe you were on the board of directors at Livingston University.
I was on the board of trustees. And chairman of that board for a period of time. That's a school that a lot of people in this area attended because it was close and cheap.
Can you hold it yourself? You need me to hold it?
She was a Johnston, and my best recollection is that she was Grandpa Johnston's aunt. That his father, who worked on this building in Mrs. Bush were brothers and sisters.
They donated 5 acres of land here.
I believe that's correct, isn't it?
I've lived here almost 70 years. I was born in the house, the picket fence on, going towards the river. And I lived within 300 yards of where I was born. Been here all my life. I went to church here all my life. This road was dirt road. And the road going in front of the town hall was the highway, moving out, straightening the curve out there in front of Higgins' old place. We walked to Sunday school and church, and you had to go every time they had it. Mama had you here. Whether you wanted to go or not, you was going to church. If you didn't go here, they had a bus that run to Calvert and Nazarene Church. You caught it and went down there, and I went into Wells Church. But you was going to church on Sunday somewhere. And I've been going to church all my life, and I think 2 or 3 Sundays ago, the first Sunday I missed coming to McIntosh in about 25 years. My great-grandson was christened in church up at Ebenezer, and I had to go with, so I missed him, and I went to church. I have a personal place I sit in church, anybody gets in, I run them off. Got my own seat. I'm scared the Lord will miss me if I don't sit in that hole. I've been married here for 27 years. I'm the only mayor that ever had. Catherine Payne was my town clerk for a long time. Dolly Coleman, who was my Peggy's daughter, was the first town clerk we had when we were getting organized. Then Miss Fleming lived here. She lives in Jackson now. Jim Fleming worked at the plant. His wife was secretary for a while, and Catherine came over. I stayed for 15, 20 years, I guess. And then she retired, and Sharon Ross took the town. We've had about 5 police chiefs since I've been here. We have our present police chief who retired from the state of Alabama. He was state investigator, Michael Barnett. We were real fortunate to get him to be our police chief. Everybody in the country wanted, but this was close to home, and this is what he wanted. So we have, I think, the best police force in the state for the size of town hall. We have our town hall. What year did it built, Cal?
Finished in 83.
83. And if any of y'all haven't been by there, I invite you to go see it. It's as nice in any town of this size as you'll find. And the best thing about it is paid. And we have a fire department that we're proud of. We have over $500,000 worth of equipment in it. And it's all paid for except the new fire truck. And we're fighting it pretty good. We have one of the finest rescue squads in the state of Alabama. It's recognized as the best in the state of Alabama. Of course, they do that on their own. Town help, but that's different entities from the town. They're not incorporated in our work. We work with them, and they do a marvelous job. We have a library, which is a branch to Chatham Library. The size of it, I put it within the library in the state of Alabama. If any of y'all haven't been to our library, I invite you to go there. My wife puts in about 4 days a week down there. I can't get something because she loves the library. She stays there. And Doris Tarr was a contributor. She contributes her time down there. Julia Wells, Professor Wells, used to be principal of the school at McIntosh. Frank Moore, his wife works down there bottom. And we just got a grant from, a gift from the Gates Foundation to put 6 computers in there to put us on the internet and online anywhere in the world on our library. And we gave $5,000 from the town last meeting night to help them get it going. And in about a month and a half, we'll be on the internet and go anywhere in the United States, our library, and all the schools and so forth. We have, I don't know how many, I did know how many people that use the library. We average around 60 books a day, checking out, people coming in reading and checking them out. We have class from all the schools come out and get their reports. The teachers will bring the whole class and they do all their reports and everything. It's really been a help to our community. A lot of, there's more volunteer service in this little town than anyone I know of. Everybody you see volunteers for something. They're either in the rescue squad, the library, or somewhere they volunteer their time. They don't get enough recognition for doing it. Getting back to some of the families here, Charlie Harris, we called him up Charlie. All the daughters was kin to the Harrises, except my family. My mother was, she was a Yankee from up north. And most of the daughters married Harris. That's what made my own kin from. And Charlie Harris had a big family here. And used to, if you was in McIntosh, you said, "How you Mr. Doherty," or "How you Mr. Harris?" And you had it. You one or the other. That's all it was here when I was young. Of course, in McIntosh was here. They've been here for years and years. And the thing I remember most about this is you make the best biscuit you ever eat in your life. I used to go up there with her son Bill and Bobby, and she'd make us biscuits. And I dreamed I'd go eat one of those biscuits. The church was saying this ceiling in here, my grandfather Hildebrand, he lived right in the corner of the street over here, run a store and a little chicken farm and so forth. And he's the one that put the ceiling in this church. That's been years and years ago. I can't all remember when he died. He's dead. My father had 10 kids. He moved into the house that I was born in 1927, and I was born in 28. He had lived out in the area about 4 miles out. We all were settled at that time. And then they all moved in here. And I've heard him talk about the time when they used to cut timber all summer, and in the spring when the water got up, they'd flow it down the river and they'd take the rails and mobile on rafts and catch the steamboat back up the river and go down to McIntosh. And they lived in logs or either the cow. We used to drive the cows here. And at Chickasaw, where the old Gulf Homes is at, used to be during the war, that's where the rest of the cows overnight before they loaded them on the boat. I heard him and Uncle Bud and them talking. Higgins' daughter, he had a big family. That's Howard's granddaddy. He was my daddy's brother. And me and Howard's daddy was first cousin. He had Ray, Yugi, Purvis, Grady, Dolly, Lewis. There was a whole pile of them. Those, they're all gone. And I'm getting up in age now. We used to talk about old folks, and I'm the old folks. So I know what they're talking about. The history of McIntosh, I guess I have read it 100 times. Mr. Theodore Pearson put out a book. And I just about memorized it. And I'll let him tell you the history of McIntosh, but he knows more about it than anybody I know as far as the actual history. And Mr. Pearson, I want to thank you for the time and effort you put in and keep no record, because if it hadn't been for you, we probably wouldn't know where we come from right here. And one of the interesting things that I read in Mr. Pearson's book was the Rain School in Mobile was named for B.C. Rain. He lived here in McIntosh, and Hellcat Lake down here used to be near Rain Swamp. That was his land. And he moved to Mobile, and that school was named for him. But most of those people come through this area at one time or another. In those years that McIntosh was the capital of the county, or county seat. And there's a lot of history in McIntosh. A lot of history we don't know about that went on here. Because it was kind of a crossroads going from Atlanta to New Orleans or back to Mobile around. This was kind of a crossroads. And there's a lot of history that we don't know about, I'm sure. The plant came here in 1952. We had, I believe, 5 grocery stores. We only have one now, so we're not growing it. We have, of course, they've done a lot of good in this community. They've provided a lot of jobs, put a lot of money into town. I'm not saying it big. We did have 5 little stores. Edson Harris had a store. Purvis had a store. Malcolm Bryant had a store. Mr. Lee, Mr. Hinson. The Hinson family been here for years. They all moved out here now. They owned the house where Grizz is sitting now was Hinson. Well, the 7 owned first. And then Hinson lived there where the town hall is. And they moved in there where Grizz is sitting. They moved out a while. I remember Miss Stella, who was the postmistress. The old post office about right at the end of that wall, and not much longer than that stayed, just a hole in the wall walking. And I always get a laugh out of it, and she got a big kick out of it. And anybody, somebody asked, have you got the mail up yet? Somebody said, no, she hadn't read all the postcards. She didn't know what was going on. It was late getting the mail. They had a black man, and he had a horse named Dan. I don't know what the man's name was, but the road went right by Uncle Higgins' old house. They come out at the boat booth. That was the main road then. And he met the train on a horse and brought the mail in. And then later on, Mr. Rob and Miss Laura started picking up the mail. After that, the road by my house was blacktopped in 1953. I built there in 1950.
That's River Road.
River Road. It wasn't blacktop. I built there in 1950. It was dirt road. I went to work for Stutt Lumber Company in 1948 when I got out of school. It was the biggest industry in Washington County at that time. I was a superintendent and I was 18 years old. I worked there 2 years and then cut out and moved. I've been in construction all my life. I have 3 kids. My son is, I put him in business in Mobile, has a construction business, CMS Construction Company.
That's Chris.
Chris. And Nancy and Ronnie live here in McIntosh. Ronnie has his own company. I put him in business. He's been in business for 10, 15 years. Raymond and Janine live in the old Common Pringle place. Raymond was working and was unfortunate. He got hurt. He's on permanent disability. But they do it all right. I have 8 grandkids and 1 great grandkid. And thank God all of them are almost grown. I've never had any problems with drugs. None of them have been arrested. And I just thank God for that.
Who'd you say your daddy was?
Hiram was. Hiram. He was the youngest of the old Doherty family. He was a baby.
When did Stutt? Is it Stutts? When did they shut close down?
1951. They moved out here in 1951.
When did y'all get electricity in McIntosh?
Best of my memory, I think, is 1941. How does that sound about right? We were working at the shipyard.
Ruth said 1934.
No. It was later than that because Powell Gillett wired our house. I remember that in Leroy.
Do you know anything about these benches?
Now,
Do you know anything about these benches?
all I know is they're huge because you can see the wave. Because
I know what they, how long they've been here.
ever since the church.
Uh,
Ever since the church was built, I'm sure. Now that
these
molding,
old boards,
yes, ma'am. That molding was put on by my grandfather, but the seat was on, that was it to it later. You can see the waves on the weather. You can see the waves on this where it flows. Oh, this was it. That's about all, Wayne. Unless somebody wants to ask me a question, I'll probably done said too much.
What year was McIntosh Incorporated?
1970, April of 1970, incorporated on my anniversary. I was married April the 7th, 1950, on a Good Friday.
Who were your brothers and sisters?
Oh boy, Ruth Everett was my oldest sister, and Helen Touchstone, She lives over in Mississippi. Velma Patrick lives here. She was married to Edward Patrick. Edward Doherty was my brother. He's dead. He married a girl from Mount Vernon, Joliet County. Marvin Doherty lives in Brandon, Mississippi. His wife, he's still kicking. And myself, Bernice Earl Cray lives in New Hampshire. She married a Navy pilot left here. And Betty Milstead married a boy from Jackson. Gerald Doherty married a girl from Pop. He's retired from Seabergeiger. He was a chemical engineer. And Bonnie Doherty, who's stationed over here in Texas, what's the name of it, College?
College Station.
College Station. She's a doctor. Works, teaches at College Station.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. And that's all. That's enough. There was 10 of them. There was really 11. One died. But right after he lived about 3 or 4 months. And all of them are living except one. He died. The rest of them all living.
My name is Kathleen Payne. I live here in McIntosh. Originally, I was a Johnson, of the John Johnson family. In my family, I guess I'm the only one who lived here in McIntosh, but we were so close within 7 miles that we felt we were a part of McIntosh. Excuse me. You know all that since Chapel.
Just
My
mention
father-
who they were.
My father was John Johnston. My mother was Annie Harris, which was born here in McIntosh. Oh, I think both of them were. And I'm a member of 12, but 2 died in infancy. And everyone is deceased except 2 of us now. Living here, Mayor Doherty offered me a job. Of course, I had to apply and there was competition, but I was the lucky one. I got the job. It was a very good job, and the people I worked for were superb. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
How many years were you clerk?
15 years. And as he said, we managed a new town hall, and I still think it's one of the prettiest facilities in Washington County. It's beautiful, and anyone that hasn't seen it should go by, because it's beautiful.
You were married to who?
Travis Payne. He was from Jackson, Alabama. And I have 1 daughter, Constance, and 2 grandchildren.
Where does she live?
She resides in Orange Beach. And she has her own business there, and so does her husband. They're very happy. They have the best schools over there. And I just wish we had them here. Thank you.
My name is Jim Tucker, and I'm married to Geraldine McIntyre. And we live in the oldest house in McIntosh. It's somewhere between 150 and 160 years old. It was originally homesteaded, and my wife's brother has the papers where Grover Cleveland signed the papers when he was governor of Alabama. The house was originally owned by the slaves and was purchased by my wife's grandfather, Andrew McIntyre, in 1916. Somewhere in the late 1800s and early 1900s, it was used as the first schoolhouse in McIntosh. The upstairs, what's now bedrooms, was used to teach children. The house, the only picture that we have in our family right now is somewhere about the 1930s. You don't see any electrical wires going to it.
You get
And the house had outside bathroom facilities till the late 50s, Jerry. I always kid everybody and tell everybody that I was born in Virginia and I came down here, been here 25 years, kid everybody and tell them that I came down here and rescued my wife that took her and showed her what the inside bathroom was like. Married her. Yeah. But
Where's the house located here?
it's borders the Sivagagi property, just north of the McIntosh city limits. And when I first met my wife, I was telling her about my grandfather. He was a railroad man, and she was telling me about her grandfather, and I was thinking, this woman really knows how to stretch the truth. But I found out that some of the stories that she told me about Andrew Jackson McIntyre was true, and I'll just tell you two of the stories that a lot of people have confirmed. One was that Ty Cobb, a famous baseball player, came down and Mr. McIntyre would take him hunting, and he challenged him to a race. And Ty Cobb was supposed to be pretty fast, running short distances on bases. And so Mr. McIntyre said he picked the course, and naturally he picked a briar patch and through the woods, which he was familiar with, and he won the race. And then my wife told me that her grandfather had pet bears and walked them around on a leash and would keep the slaves in line. And I thought, she might be stretching the truth a little bit there, but there's pictures of them around Lewis's house having some bears on the leash and smoking a corncob pipe. So I thought that was really interesting. He raised cattle and hogs. And my wife and I moved into the house around 1980. It was in need of a lot of repairs. It had been remodeled partially, I guess, twice before we moved in. And I had been working overseas, and we had a trailer on the property. And Mr. and Ms. McIntyre, my wife's mother and father, said, "Boy, we'd sure like to live in that trailer with all the maintenance on this house." I said, "Fine, we'll trade you and I'll remodel it." And anyone who tells you it's fun remodeling a 160-year-old house, there's not anything in there that's square. So it took 7 years between me and some other contractors and my son working, part-time between my vacations to get it to the point that it is now. It still looks like an old farmhouse, but it's comfortable. I think Lucille Allsbrook can give you more information as far as the family and the people and friends. Thank you.
I'm Lucille Allsbrook, and I moved to their old home up there in 1970, January. The schools, they said they used to teach school upstairs for the old house. And then they had a little one-room school right out to the west there where my brother Carl lives. We went to school there. Miss Louise Slade taught us 2 years. And then they bought a dwelling over there. I think it was a mall place right where the school is then. And turned that dwelling house into a school. Then later on they built the other school. Miss Louise Slade used to come to school up at the little one-room school, and the boys would tie a horse, take a horse loose and tie it, tend to it, and then they'd hitch it up the evening before to go home. That was Mr. Tony Slade's daughter.
Now, is that where Frank Boykin Elementary is today?
No. The first little school was right up there where my brother Carl lived. Just right up above it, just a big one room. And that's where I started school, 2 years there. And then they bought that building, and turned it into a school. But you can see that where that little room sit right out in front of that barn. You know, where we run around and play. You know.
And who were you married to?
Me, I was a McIntosh. I married Johnny Austin.
Who was your father and mother?
Andrew Jackson McIntosh.
And who was your mother before she married?
She was Ethel Jane McIntosh. She was the oldest street.
How many children did you have?
2.
Who were they? Who are they?
William Moss, Brooke, Bill, and then Bobby.
The one that was the ball player.
Sure.
Oh, Frank.
Yeah, tell us about him. Tell us
And
about the one that was basically the baseball player.
Andy played professional ball.
Could you tell us about him?
Is he the one they call Sugar?
Yeah,
And he played with who?
played with the Mobile Bears. So.
I believe he went on to the major leagues too, didn't he?
Triple A, I think, is first guy, he was up around Baltimore, that's where he married.
Now, Frank played ball around the Chatham. I don't know how many places he played. My brother Frank.
Got a name of brothers.
Name your brothers.
Travis McIntosh, Carl.
Ty Cobb.
Huh?
Was it Ty Cobb? Was that his name?
No, I don't.
He was named after Ty Cobb.
Yeah, my daddy used to hunt with Ty Cobb. And, see,
How did he get to know Ty Cobb?
uh,
How did he ever get to meet Ty Cobb or know him?
we lived over at Carlton, and my daddy was, would take people hunting down this small, looked after land. In fact, he worked for Mr. Douglas. And he would take them hunting, they'd come down there, and it was Travis, Cobb, Frank, myself, and there was Woodrow, and Andrew, and Lewis.
That was Woodrow Wilson, wasn't it?
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson. And Andrew Jackson.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Woodrow fought Guadalcanal, and Pelly Lou was wounded. And then Andrew fought, he was in the, he joined the Navy, but he worked with he had Marine uniforms and Navy uniforms. Bobby was in the Corps.
Give us your name and
I'm Lee Van Hoos, and I live about 2.5 miles up the road at the old Van Hoos place. And I went to school. I went to school in McIntosh a little bit, and then I went to Calvert. Went to Calvert 3 years, and then went to Leroy from my 6th grade to I finished high school. And then
when did you finish high school?
1936. And I lived here in 1940 and went to Spring Hill, Louisiana, and worked for the International Paper Company. And I retired in 1981. And I came back over here. I've been here ever since. Not too much to tell.
Who was your father and mother?
My father was J.M. Van Hoos. His father, the Van Hooses, came from Birmingham. And my mother
Why did they come here?
Well, Mr. Douglas, my grandfather, he was working in the mines in North Alabama, coal burn, I think. They got bought up, he bought up some land down here. He bought about 14,000 acres. And they moved down here.
14,000 acres.
And he owned all of this area down here, back down to the river.
What year was the old house built?
My house,
The big gray house.
Big gray one, the oldest one there.
I think it was completed about 1912. And I have some pictures here. It is Mr. Douglas, and this is the old Douglas house, which is up on the hill north of the hardware store. And it burned down in 1928. That's when they moved the Boykin Clubhouse up to the Milner Hill up at the Milner place. My mother's third cousin built that Milner place and lived in it a while, and then he went back to Birmingham. But my mother and daddy, they married up in the Douglas place. This place right there. And I was reading an account of it in one of the books that one of the Milners wrote that the day they got married, Daddy's people came down and they put a sleeper on the side out here, Field Station, right? Just about directly east of him, about a mile, 2 miles. And they came down on the sleeper and they were pretty well to be people in Birmingham. In fact, he was the mayor of Birmingham at one time. But at that time, Birmingham was a rough town. Like if somebody tried to kill him. He was supposed to be. He was real good with a pistol. And this guy came across his room and he woke up and he fired at the man and come fired a few days later over in around Best, Alabama. He was living in Birmingham at that time. And he moved in the van, but he never did follow up on doing anything with it. And my mother, Mr. Douglas, she lived up in this Douglas house.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
She had one brother. He was Howard Douglas.
Did you have any? Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had one brother, and
Who were they? What were their names?
one brother was J.M. Van Hoos Jr. And he died about 7 years ago. I have two sisters, which is Ms. Eugene Howell Jr., Sunflower, and then my older sisters, Kathleen Johnson with Tonka, and she's lived there in north of Montgomery ever since she's married in 1933. And she had 3 or 4 children. One of them died, got killed in an automobile accident when he was 14. But main thing now, I'm just living up here. I married Julia Allen Grenade Leroy in 1940.
How many children did you have?
One son and 2 daughters.
One son and 2 daughters.
I'm getting confused now when I'm getting.
And one son lives in Lydell, Louisiana, and has 2 children.
What are their names?
He's Lee Van Hook Jr. And they have a boy and a girl. And we live up here in a little house that we built next to the big old Van Hook's house.
We have two children, Lee Van Hoos Jr., and then we have one daughter, Martha Van Hoos. She lives in Natchez, Mississippi. And the youngest daughter, she teaches school. She's married and lives in Jackson. She has 2 boys. One of them's 16, the other one's about 18. He's going to college at Faulkner State, and the youngest one's going to school at Jackson High School.
What's the other picture you have there?
These just the pictures up at Douglas Place. This is one of them. I guess that's the pasture right there. You see that? My
Yes.
finger in the way?
Uh-huh. Who is that? Who's in the picture?
That's Mr. Douglas in the picture. That's my grandpa.
Okay.
And this is the Douglas house that burned in 28, and that's Mr. Douglas there.
Okay.
I never did remember seeing him. He died before I remember him. I thought he was an old man. He died, he was 52 when he died.
I met Lee Van Hook when I was 16 years old. I lived in Leroy. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. 2 of my brothers are pastors, and one of them was in the service, and he's moved to Georgia. 3 of them lived in Georgia.
What's their names?
Renee, Reverend Applelane, Dr. Charles Renee. Ben, my brother Ben's service, he moved to Georgia. and I have a sister that lives in Jackson, and she lives in the Willow State, and I have a sister that died. And we sold our old house that lived at Lebanon. But we live in a little house now. I don't think we showed you the picture about the old big man house. I'm not a good speaker now.
Who was your husband?
Who was my husband?
Who is?
That's me.
Okay. And,
My name's Julia.
all
You
right.
don't know us since I was this high. You've known me since I was that high. I was that tall when you used to.
My name is Margaret Coble, and I have been living in McIntosh approximately 7 years. I inherited Laura Boykins' home at her death in 1992, April of 1992, 6 weeks before her 100th birthday. My grandmother, Rebecca Stedham, was married to Edgar Stedham. My grandmother was born in Arkansas. My grandfather was born in Baldwin County. They met in Jackson, Alabama. My grandmother was teaching school, and my grandfather was cruising timber. And they lived in the same boarding house. They met, married, and lived happily ever after, raised 5 children: Edgar Stedham, Joe Stedham, Caroline Stedham, who died at about 16 or 18, Laura Stedham, and my mother, Pearl Stedham. Joe married Kate Lacoste from Mobile, I think. Had a brother, Albert Lacoste, who lived here at McIntosh. Brother Joe, Edgar, married a Miss Johnston, who was related to Catherine's aunt. Right. And the daughter Caroline married a man from Leroy and had 1 son. I cannot remember the man's name, but they had 1 son, Lester. Aunt Laura married Rob Boykin. They lived here in McIntosh all of their life. Mother left here during World War I. Was working for civil service in Augusta, Georgia. At the end of World War I, they transferred her to Atlanta. And she met my dad, and they married and lived happily ever after in Atlanta. My 2 brothers and I were born and raised in Atlanta, but we always looked forward to summertime, to come to McIntosh to spend the summer when my grandmother and grandfather were alive. My grandmother and grandfather went to church here. Mother taught Sunday school here. They would get up on Sunday mornings in the cold, cold weather. My grandfather would either come make a fire in the heater here, or if my grandfather was too tired, the grandmother would get up and make a fire. Mother has made a fire here. And Mother taught Sunday school here during her teenage years. And of course, I remember visiting with my grandparents when my grandmother was the postmistress. And my brother and I would walk into the post office, and my grandmother would have a fit. You're not supposed to be in here. And to get us out of the courthouse, she would give us a stick of juicy fruit gum. I will never forget juicy fruit chewing gum. And we would chew the chewing gum for a while, and she'd call us back. And then she'd take the gum away from us. She didn't like it. It had sugar in it, but she wanted it after we had finished it. We'd gotten the sugar out of it. But anyway, we would spend our summers here when my grandmother and grandfather were alive. And after they passed away, and we became teenagers, we had our activities in Atlanta, and I did not come down as much, but always look forward to coming back to McIntosh. And when my husband retired from St. Regis Paper Company, we retired from Jacksonville, Florida, came over to Daphne, and ended up here at McIntosh. And my husband would say every afternoon at tea time, he would sit either on the front porch or in the living room and look around and say, what a wonderful place to end up. And what a nice place to retire. He loved it as much as any native McIntoshian.
Tell us about the,
Well,
where was it located?
Pardon?
Where was it located?
Well, I thought that was the first post office, but I understand was not the first post office. But the post office I remember was right in the corner of the yard. And I can remember people would come in to pick up their mail, and my grandmother would rave and rant, tell so-and-so that I have a COD package here, and if they don't come get it by tomorrow, I'm sending it back. And like someone said earlier, I guess she spent most of her time reading the postcards and would pass the information along to the other people as they would come in to pick up their mail.
It was near where real store is now.
It was, yes, the house that I remember and the post office that I remember was located about where the variety store stands now. And after my parents after my grandmother retired and they became incapacitated, sold the house to the Hinsons and lived with their son Joe in Mobile for a while, and then Aunt Laura moved them back up to McIntosh where they lived until their death.
Came down here in October of 1949. I was from Murray, Alabama. My father was James Samuel Wiggum, and my mother was Mary Long Wiggum. And I came from Livingston down here to the school. And I met Vivian, and you married, so there's not much to tell. And so all this other stuff that happened by the time I come.
Okay, give us the names of your children.
Okay, I have Belinda Jones. She's married to Ken Jones from behind Illinois. They live in Mobile. He lives in Seabrook, an accountant. And Renee Reynolds, she's married to Ronnie Reynolds. She lives in Mount Vernon. They have 4 children, sorry. And then I have Mark, Mark and Craig, you talked about that. So that's it.
This is the Methodist hymnal, and it's 1909, but it's just words. There's no music, just the words to the song.
Okay. Mr. Pearson, do you have any history on the church?
I'd like to say a word.
Why don't you stay up? Start off, just tell them who you are so we can get it on.
Truth. Yeah, Governor Truth of Georgia was born down here at McIntosh. Plus, he was the first Alabamian to be named the governor in the United States. Congress made born in Georgia also.
Most of you, some of you may not know, Mr. Pearson's our first Washington.
That store was the center of the community.
This is May the 3rd, 1998, and we are in Hawthorn, Alabama. Please.
Right. This is the L.T. Hinson home. It was built somewhere in the 1890s. It's been added on to from time to time ever since. This is the store behind.
built in 1913.
This house, this store, was the center of a thriving little community. When that store was built, there was turpentine still like the house here. Now there's just the store and the buildings in the back.
She did. Question of time, she had a big one with that.
This was the old smokehouse.
You can't see the old nails that were on the joists up there that they hung the hams on when they were cured. I don't know if you can see that. It's still there. Part of the original house. They moved them back in early 1920s, I guess, 1800s, a long time along there. They moved these two rooms out back, and later on they were used as maids' houses. They had several maids that lived here, and that's where they stayed.
Was this a pretty good sized community at that time?
Well, this was the center of the community, this area around here. The store in front was the trading area, this whole area, for 10 miles, I guess, we're in the area. Smokehouse, orchard, see the open space, that was the orchard. It had the garden out in that area, it had the fruit trees and chicken houses. The barn was on beyond it.
That was the old hen house. And that's from the early 1900s, you think? This was the old store and post office for the Hawthorn community. Okay.
We done? Okay. Welcome to the L.T. Hinson house. We're in the community of Hawthorn. I don't know whether Hawthorn is still on your maps anymore or not. I'm here to tell you a bit about the house that we are in. This house was the home of the L.T. Hinson family.
Who are you?
I am Sid Shell. I am a grandson of L.T. Hinson. You have a paper, little short paper that I had prepared to tell you about the house. I'll tell you about the evolution of this house. This house was not built as it is now. And in the book, in the little paper that you have, you'll have a drawing that shows the house from, let's see, we have one.
Can you see the little house? Or could we move?
I need Mr. Daniels.
That's all right, we'll just move the house over. There we go. There we go.
That's fine. You all right now?
In your paper, you have a drawing that shows the evolution of Hawthorn House. This type of drawing did not come easily. For years I had wandered around the house and it was obvious there used to be a door here and this was a window there. And it was obvious that we have different floors. The floors in this part of the house is totally different from the floors in that part of the house. And I sat down with my mother back here in the back room, January, February of '96. And she was able to explain it to me so I could come up with a drawing. I then sat down with Uncle Davis, one here. He was born in this house in 1905. And you get bits and pieces. I then start going through all of the family photographs. And I find a photograph of a great aunt standing on this corner. I found another photograph of somebody standing right here on this corner. Photographs of John T. If John T. hadn't come along when Mother had a camera, this is my Aunt Virgia's oldest, we got photographs of John T. all over the place. Mother had a little box Brownie camera in the early 1920s. So we got photographs of John T. sitting on the steps here, John T. in the yard, John T. in the yard over here, over here, over here. We also then found a photograph of my Uncle Sam standing here, so you get a look down this side of the house. So I get bits and pieces of the house from photographs. So then I set about, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to determine how it evolved, but I also want to paint a picture of it as it looked in before this addition was built. So I start sketching this painting that's on the wall in this room. If you hadn't been through all the rooms, we'll go on a tour through all the rooms in a few minutes. So I start sitting down to do this painting. But I'm having a little difficulty with the perspective. Looking at this angle, how big an opening do you see through the little walkway, the breezeway? So I said, well, I'll just build me I got lots of styrofoam poster board, so I'll just build me a little 1/4-inch model so that I can see the perspective. Needless to say, I enjoy building models, but I got carried away. So this was the model that I built of the house, of this house, as it appeared in 1925. This was done for the purpose of painting this picture. So let me show you what we have here. The room that you're in was not here in 1925. This room was built at a later date. This house originally started with these two rooms over here, which are these two rooms, this middle room and this back room. And the store was on the front of this house. Where this front bedroom is, this was the store. This structure was built sometimes in the 90s. I have not pinned down precisely the date that the first store was built. Captain Fletcher Hooks had a store, a commissary here.
Talking about 1890s.
In 1890s. This commissary was necessary because the first lumbering operation started when Baird Lumber Company, who had a mill at 3 Mile Creek in Mobile, built a switch that came out in these woods. The Southern Railroad was built 1870. In the early 90s, Baird had built a switch off of the Southern Railroad at the point, I've seen it on maps as Baird, but it's right where Seba is now. It had a switch and the railroad came up to Jelks Road, came to Jelks Road about to the highway, and then it turned west and went just about to the Ave Road. That was the main line. Off of that, they had the little railroads that they just lay out over to bring the logs in. We're right down in front of where Aunt Marie's is now. There was their main camp, and their main logging camp. And this store was apparently, and I say apparently, was built as a commissary in connection with that log camp. At about the same time, there were people homesteading around, and there were a number of people. The area was growing. This is one of the last areas homesteaded. As late as 1890, we're finding swamp and overflow patterns to land back up north of us, principally at the southern end of Gulf Pine. So you had a number of people coming in, but they were coming in principally into this area because the railroad lines came in and the timber was going off to Mobile. So this was built originally with the store. There was shed rooms off to the side, kitchen. This was the kitchen, a little smokestack. This room is presently on the back, from the back. This room is still there. The present kitchen is still here. This was another shed room. Now, my grandfather, took over the operation of this store with Captain Fletcher Hooks about 1901. He moved into the house here, somewhere between 1902 or 3, between 03 and 05. And the reason I say that is because my mother tells me that Uncle Lewis was born at Grandpa Hinson's, great-grandfather Hinson's house, which was a log cabin across on the hill across the creek in 1900. Aunt Virgie was born in a place, all these called, quote, the burn house. Now there's a better name for it, but if you want, the family knows it as the burn house place. And that was right over behind Uncle Davis's house, which is over here on the ridge and behind that. And I'm going to digress just a minute. I grew up talking with uncles and brothers, and they would talk about this old home place or that old home place, the burn house, the Jim house, the Tony place. The woods are full of where settlers lived. And all those places had names. It's amazing. Every ridge had a name, every branch had a name. I'm growing up, and I'm trying to remember this, but I didn't spend years of my lifetime out going and getting the cows, out sawing the trees, out bringing in the turpentine from those particular places. I don't remember the houses ever being in those places. So several years ago, and you'll find this on the wall back here in this back room, I went and bought a brand new topographic map for this whole area and dropped it off at Uncle Bob's. Edward was there. Said, Uncle Bob, we need to record all of these place names. He had them all in his mind. So for a number of months, Uncle Bob and Edward sat there in the evenings with that map and recorded each of these place names for me. And it's on the map with a long list of them. But, so the only reference, we can give you a better name, but for the family, that's the burn house. But Uncle Davis was born in 1905 in this house. Now, in 1913, the store down here was built. The store that was on the front of this house was taken off, and this room, which is this front bedroom, was built at that point in time. I think at that same point in time, these two bedrooms were built over here. Now if you look out this back window, back here out in the backyard, these two bedrooms is that building out there. But this is how the house looked in 1925. You have a drawing of it there, and you have the floor plan. But I have found that I can sit down and you can actually look in here and get a feel of how this house looked You don't get that feel just from this drawing. But when I do this little model, I get a feeling of it. Now this model was, I told you I just built it just as a quick put together model to get a perspective for my painting. It's built out of styrofoam board. This base is nothing but 2 pieces of styrofoam that's just glued together. I put a little wood strip around it, painted a dirt seam to mount it on. It's built out of styrofoam. The outside walls are 5 folders scored. The roofing is made out of regular copy machine paper. I made a little jig with little pieces of plastic, and I would wet the paper, put them in the clamp, and clamp them down each one, and that gave me the corrugations, which was then put on with little, and the wooden part of it is interesting. I'd been to a convention somewhere, and there was this big cup full of coffee stirrer sticks, and I said, I just have just the thing for those coffee stirrer sticks. So that's the porch's floor. I didn't intend, I started off this just rough, just to get it, but I just kind of got carried away. But the porch is made out of coffee stirrer sticks, the chimneys is made out of, and the supports are made out of balsa, sawed, with little saw scribings and painted. And then the doors and windows are put on. They're basically little strips of wood with, again, with poster board just glued on. But it gives gives you a feeling of what the house looked like at that point in time. This is the front. This front is right here. This is the front steps are essentially where they are now. Except now the porch comes across. There is now, these 2 rooms have been built. These 2 rooms were built in about 1928. When the children got to age to go to school, you had a boarding school in Chatham. You had, there's a picture in here of the Washington County School, which was the 2 schoolroom right down the road. But when Uncle Lewis and Uncle Davis got old enough to go to high school, they were sent off to Chatham and boarded in the dormitory in Chatham. Aunt Virgie went off to Chatham to go to school, and she boarded with, and Mother's here, she can correct me on some of these things, but she boarded with Aunt Sadie, who was Papa Hinson's sister, who had a house that used to be on the corner by the, right behind where City Hall is now. Sadie Kirkland. They had the store at Tibbet. Mother got high school age, and she went and boarded for a while, but grandfather says, no, we're going to move to Chatham and get so the kids can go to school. So they built in 1925 the house that I grew up in, that my mother still lives in Chatham. So this house was in vacant for a couple of years. Uncle Davis got married in June of 1928. He got married, Uncle Davis and Aunt Dorothy. So he came down and started remodeling this house. Uncle Davis proceeded to take off these shed rooms. This is a bedroom and the kitchen over here. He then built this living room, this dining room, and a part of the kitchen. But the kitchen just went, there's a lower wall out there, the kitchen just went out to a point here. The side porch was not there. So Uncle Davis built that part in 1928. He hadn't been married long when grandfather decided to move back to Hawthorn. So they all moved back, and Uncle Davis then built the house right over here where his home place. There was then added the porches here on the side and an additional part on the kitchen. And then there's one other room that was built in the 1930s. somewhere 32 or 33 at about that time. This house, except for some remodeling done in the bathroom, when the bathtub was put in, is essentially as it was built, as the last wing was added in 1935. No one has lived in it since the early 1960s. It is vacant, and as you can see, it is set up for family gatherings. We will routinely have from 75 to 100 people, family members, meet here every Thanksgiving. And the family is maintaining this house for that purpose. So in '96, we decided, well, it needs painting. The interior needs painting, so we had some family work days. And the interior was repainted by family members. We'd schedule a work day and we'd bring in the materials and we'd have a dozen people painting away in different rooms. And it took 5 or 6 Saturdays of work. Then we brought in and refinished the floors. But this house, and it had, as you would expect on a house of the period, it had layer after layer of linoleums, which was taken off. Quarter sawn, this is quarter sawn hard pine floor. We did not try to strip it. We did come in with a sander just to knock some, clean it up a bit and put epoxy coating on it. But it's essentially as it was. There was associated with this house, there was right down here a turpentine steel. I did a painting of turpentine steel. I went through the same thing with the turpentine steel as I went through with this old house, but I didn't remember the 25. I remember the turpentine steel, which was in operation from 1904 up until World War II. All of them, the big brass condenser cooker came out and went in a World War II scrap drive, as did many of those turpentine steels. So it was there until World War II. There was also associated with it the cooper shop where the barrels were made. There was a blacksmith shop. There was another shop over here that had all kinds of tools that you could repair, whatever. This field was open. It kind of evolved. It was the principal purpose of what the family business was not necessarily farming, but they did have, this was always planted in corn because they had the need for the cattle and horses. But it hadn't been many years ago when you had a fairly self-sustained community with its cooper shops, its blacksmith shops, and this store was for a long period of time, the people who lived in the area. This is where you got your flour from. If you needed to order a suit, they would order it from you, and it'd be sent up by the train to Tornette and brought over. So that store was a central part of this little community for quite some time. Now,
do you know if the lumber was bought commercially, a lot of it, or was it cut here for?
Now, we did not have a sawmill associated with it, so the lumber was brought in commercially. The first sawmill, and back in the back, this back room, there's a couple of paintings of 2 Baird Lumber Company locomotives. There was a sawmill, this area had several sawmills associated with it. The first was Baird Lumber Company. Baird did not have a mill in Washington County. Baird's mill was on 3 Mile Creek in Mobile. So everything either went to a dump they had at the basin at McIntosh and down the river, or it went by rail down to the mill. But Baird was very selective in their timber harvesting. They did not go in and cut all of the trees. They just were looking for, at that point in time, they were the first ones in the area, and I assumed that they would just select just the choice trees and go. Because even after they had finished up their harvesting, there was still sufficient timber in this area for a turpentine operation. But they were in this area up until 1902 or 3 or 4, when the Cochran Mill was built at Toinette. Toinette is on Lewis's Creek. You got the bridges. If you're coming from McIntosh, you cross Lewis's Creek. First little dirt road to the right goes into the railroad. That's Toinette. There was Toinette Lumber Company. They bought out Baird, and they then brought their line from Toinette up Lewis's Creek, and it tied into the Baird line. And there's still family stories that came. They had a line that went across this field and across the creek and headed off up to the northwest. So the Toinette Lumber Company was cut the area, and they were there till about 1915 or so. And the area was pretty well cut over by that time. And then the last line that we had in was the Headley Pine built a mill at Uniform, which was later sold out to the Horace Turner operation, that had a mill at one time at Vinegar Bend, and then they bought it, and they bought what's this property north of us known as the Turner Pine property. They had a railroad that came over part of the property down Rattlesnake Branch. And Edward has been working now diligently for a year or so. As the timber is being cut off, you can now go out and follow where these principal lines went. Well, the timber's big, you just simply, it's very difficult. But we have been trying to, while we got a chance, while it's cut right now, Edward has been mapping in detail where each of these railroad lines went. The Toinette and Western Railroad, which is what Cochran called there, is quite a pretentious name. But he found that when he tied his line from the southern into the AT&N over at Uniform, he then became a common carrier, and he could get passes. He'd go right on anybody's railroad. So they named the line the Toinette and Western Railroad, which came across right through here. But there was the closest sawmill was the mill down here at Toinette. But this area was completely logged over by a point in time in the 1920s or so. That's when the population growth was in the area. When the first settlers came in was with the timber companies.
Do you know when electricity was brought in to this house?
Electricity was brought into yes. Now, my grandfather, when he built his house in Chatham in 1925, had a Delco system. When they moved back to Hawthorn in 1928, they brought the Delco system with them. So some of the wiring up in the ceiling, it's not twisted wiring like this. We still got wiring up here in the attic that's got the two connectors and the two wires. The old Delco wires, I believe some of them still up there. But there was a Delco system out back. Its principal purpose, though, was to pump water into a tank which supplied the turpentine still in this house. Then a line was run across Uncle Davis's house over here from the same well. But power came in 1938 when the RE8 came in, and the house was electrified at that time. And these fixtures, I don't believe, have been touched since either they were put in for the Delco system or put in for 1938. We did check them. Edward has been up in the attic before as a part of our refurbishing. We needed to know whether the the wiring was sufficient. So we've been up in the attic and we've checked them, and for what we use it for, it's sufficient. You could not plug an air conditioning unit into one of these, but this is the typical lighting that I think you would find in houses of that period. Still there. There's the drop bulb. That's it. There are very few wall plugs. There's a wall plug in here, there's a wall plug here, and wall plugs in here. So this was the new addition, the quote new addition that was done in 28. There's no wall plugs at all in the older part of the house. And we found out about doing the floors, and I sealed them. There was a little hole about this big, right over here where Clarence is sitting. And I was looking at that and said, what's that for? And Mother says, well, that's where the ice box sat, right there. And they had the drain hole through there. So when the electricity came in, they threw the ice box out, but put the refrigerator right back where it was, notwithstanding it was in the dining room rather than the kitchen. At a later time, it was moved into the kitchen. I do not know when they got the butane gas in, but it came at a later date when I was little. The wood-fired stove is still in there. The fireplaces that have been here were original. We did have a double fireplace. It's shown on your map. There's a double fireplace between these two rooms. That fireplace was original fireplace. It was not built on a concrete slab, as you would set about to do now. While this house is this thick, but it was just built with dirt, with bricks up. A number of years ago, the armadillos came in and dug underneath it to make them a house, and the whole thing collapsed. You had holes this big in the fireplace, so we took the fireplace out, and it opened up that wall back there, which suited our purpose very well anyway, because the house is used as a family meeting house, so it did not interfere with the utility at all to take that wall out. In fact, we'd probably be better off to take some more of the walls out. But that is the evolution of the house, and that's what we're talking about today. That's in the little paper that you have. That's some family history, but basically I wanted to tell you about the house itself.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Did you find any of the outside houses rotted? Did you leave it long enough that any of the outside you had to replace were rotted or anything? Or
It is hard pine, and there will be a board, a little piece here, a little piece there, but the painters were in last year, and I don't believe they painted it without replacing a board. This house out here was built in about 1913. That coat of paint on it is the original coat of paint. So, and it's hardly any paint on it. It did have a coat of paint on it at one point in time. And the store, I think we're seeing no paint on the interior, but the exterior was painted, and we were kind of surprised as the paint wore off. We were able to see things like, wait, this door had a red trim around the door. You couldn't see it, but now the paint that was painted over. So apparently there was two coats of paint on the store, but that's the original paint on the house out back.
This small little building.
The two-bedroom unit is out there, right?
What's that? This other small building.
That is a smokehouse. Everybody had a smokehouse, and there have been over the years lots of pigs hung up in that smokehouse. Deers hung up in that smokehouse. I can remember as a child, pig killing was a big affair. There was a big pot, iron pot about so big. It had come from the salt works over in Clark County. And you would singe your pig down, boil him in that. You get Mother to give you the details on that. But the smokehouse was used. Keeping, and on the other side of it is a carport. Now that structure was built out of the timbers from the turpentine still, which was torn down right at the end of World War II. And we had holes this big in the tin roof of it. We were wondering, well, man, that roof didn't last long. Somebody reminded me, wait a minute, that's tin that came off the steel, which was put there in 1904. So what do you mean it didn't last very long? So we have maintaining these structures has taken something of a family commitment. As you see, they're happy to tell you who my mother is. There she is right here. This is Bernice Hinson. She grew up in this house. She married Fritz Shell. This family, many of these families, where is Joe over here? The Hinson Shell family kind of did a merger a number of years ago. We had, my mother married Fritz Shell, my Aunt Virgie married Virgie Hinson, mother's sister married Jack Shell, and mother's brother Davis married Dorothy Shell. So we have double first cousins.
Got cheated out of some kids.
That's right. So when you look around and look at all of my first cousins, a lot of those first cousins they're not only, they're Shells, but they're Hinsons also. So it's been so we have, at any given family occasion, we've got about equal numbers of Hinsons and Shells. And this is my brother Clarence and his son Wiley. And Wiley's two little ones. And over here hiding is Mary, Penny, Jean's wife, my wife Roxy.
Y'all come on out
here.
if you will.
Edward, step out in the door.
You can get everyone.
Step out in the door under the SEMA hat.
Yes, this is section.
It's Robert, my Uncle Bob, Robert Hinson. And standing here is Joe.
And his wife, Betty.
And his wife, Betty. Joe is one of the Hinson Shell combinations.
Betty, who were you before you married?
Baker from Auburn.
Well,
Okay.
And we'll have to tell you something funny about our daughter Sally. We named her Sally Shell. Clarence came in one day to see what we had named the baby, and Marion said, Sally Shell. Well, he went right on out the door, and in a little bit he came running back, but she's a Hinson.
Watch out whose son Joe is.
yeah, Joe.
I want to know who your daddy is.
My daddy, my Davis Hinson is my daddy.
And Dorothy Shell.
Dorothy Shell is my mother.
Penny, tell us.
I was Penny Coley from Moundville, and when I came to this area, people wanted to know who was that fern that Jean Shell had brought to Washington County.
You're the wife of Jean.
Yes.
I'm Sid's wife, Roxy Ann, and I'm from Chatham. My parents, yes, I was a Dickey, Tommy and Lloyd Dickey daughter.
Mary?
Okay, and I'm Mary Ann Warwick Shell, and I married Clarence Shell, and I was the daughter of Brigham and Nola Warwick in Chatham.
Now, Rebecca, tell us who you are and who's your mother and dad.
How old are you, Rebecca? Rebecca, how old are you?
Tell Mr. Blackman who your daddy is.
That's all right.
Say it loud.
Talk to the camera.
This is my daddy right here.
And how old are you, Julie?
8,
Okay.
and she's 4.
She's 4.
And who is your mama?
When they redid this
1925, I think.
That's 96. When he put this in.
When we were renovating this,
I thought he did a good
had
job.
to carry that old wood stove out on the porch out there, open the chamber on the side, and one of my kids said, Daddy, what's those ashes doing in this oven right here? Feel some ashes over in there in the wood stove, and we had to explain it. Well, they didn't have electricity to cook on that.
Well, I well remember the wood stove in our house.
That's all
I'm
you
thinking
can
before it was a kitchen.
But we just flew back up, probably cooked just as good as that.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as the power came through though, I'd have brought up with a home comfort, with a big one. Charged the 7 side. Warm water, put in a number 3 wash tub, take a bath.
2 bedrooms they moved off.
That was, David showed me that too. It's got cycle.
There's the old wood stove.
Yeah, that's the old wood stove. a lot of meals cooked on it.
It built that, the
Yeah.
tabletop,
Yeah.
countertop.
It was here, but it was in bad shape, and he put a new one. And look what he did here. I happened to find that one day, and I said, "What is that?" He said, "Well, all the artists are supposed to sign their work." He put his initials there.
I don't blame him. Oh. Now, what are these pictures? Who are these in the picture?
That's the old schoolhouse down the road here that I went to.
When did you go to school there?
Oh, I was born in 1909, 10, 11, 12. 15, must have started around 15 or 16. At first it was one room, and then they built that onto it. See that little old model car? That's, and that's my sister, and that's her oldest boy. He's 75 years old.
Is that right?
On that old store. And this is the blind fella that lived with us. He was a Hinson too. His folks all died. Monroe
Hinson. That was taken about when?
Well, 70. He's 75, so it must be about 74 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got them on paper so we can put them on the got some more letters on the wall that
Wayne, that deer's been there over 70 years.
Over 70 years, my. Well, he's about homesteaded then. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oldest son of L.T. Hinson. This is Davis Hinson, the second son. That's my daddy. This is Curtis Hinson. This is Robert Hinson. This is Sam Hinson. Girls, this is Robert Hinson. That's Bridgie Shell, which was a Hinson. That's Curtis Hinson. And this is Luther Tal Hinson himself. He's the owner and founder of this home and this property. This is Davis Hinson. This is Bernice Hinson Shell. That's Louis Hinson and Sam Hinson. And this is a portrait of the Hinson family made in the early 40s, I guess, when was it? 1941. That's Luther Hinson and his sons and daughter-in-laws and grandchildren. Just an old family trait.
No, when I opened it, it was a bunch of negatives. Well, I got to hold them up to the light, and there were pictures of us, Dot, and all these pictures. Well, I gave them away through the years, different ones. So we put those things and select them. He brings them back and forth and takes them home. And this old house